Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murietta Studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. David Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new TEAM therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. David is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Hello, Rhonda.
Hello, David. I'm copying you, your tone of voice.
Hello, Jeremy.
Hi.
Jeremy's on another ship.
We're about to offer the second in our series of podcasts on coronavirus, and this will feature an actual therapy session conducted just 2 days ago with a woman we're calling Alice, and she was working and receiving the magic of Dr. Rhonda and TEAM therapy. And we're really glad to have you bringing this to life for us, and really glad to have you joining us, Jeremy. And again, I was so touched by your contribution in the first podcast talking about your fiance. It was really beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. First, before we start, can I make mention of the Feeling Good Foundation?
Sure.
Yeah, many people don't know that the Feeling Good Institute has another arm or branch that's a nonprofit organization called the Feeling Good Foundation. And the Feeling Good Foundation, it's a nonprofit organization with the goal of making quality TEAM-CBT accessible to underserved populations. And the Feeling Good Foundation is now providing TEAM-CBT-based crisis support, counseling to clinical personnel and people on the front lines of the coronavirus pandemic in California. And it's really exciting. It's free to the frontline staff, nurses and firefighters and EMT and other people who are, we don't want them to be re-traumatized by the work that they're doing. And so if anybody is interested, please go to feelinggood.foundation to learn more or to donate or even to receive services.
And we'll put that in the show notes. You mentioned re-traumatized, which is a term that I've always had problems with. Would they have to be re-traumatized? I mean, could they just be upset?
Yeah, they could just be upset.
Because it's threatening to be serving on the front lines, especially when there's not enough masks to go around, and these are some of the true heroes. And you're saying that one of the functions of the Feeling Good Foundation is going to be able to offer free TEAM therapy to any of those folks who are feeling upset and needing a little extra support. Is that right?
We have a pilot project working with another nonprofit that's funding it, and I think we have space for 100. Right now, we have space for 100 clients.
Wow! And do we have enough TEAM therapists to take on 100 clients?
I think we do.
Wow!
Yes,
and
they're all of the therapists are certified at the level 3 in the FGI certification process. So they're all experienced, and we're going to also provide the therapists with clinical supervision. And Jill Levitt, who's our brilliant training director, is creating, as we speak, a training module for the therapists that are doing it. That's going to combine TEAM-CBT with this kind of frontline therapy.
Fantastic. That sounds great. Now tell us a little bit about your patient Alice and what brought her to you. In a state of, you may recall from last session, she came in and she's feeling, oh no, that's the wrong patient there. She's feeling intensely sad and depressed. 95 out of 100. She's feeling 95 out of 100 on anxiety. 65 on, I think, incompetent, 80% despairing, 100% frustrated, and jittery, 80 to 85%. Tell us about her.
And she was feeling just slightly irritated at 15.
Yeah.
Well, she is really an incredibly awesome person, and she was feeling kind of one of the negative thoughts we talked about. She was feeling really housebound, and at the same time she was thinking, oh, I shouldn't be feeling so terrible that I'm housebound because I'm a person that likes to do projects. But she wasn't able to, get up the motivation to do anything. And she was kind of just lounging around in her pajamas and criticizing herself and feeling sad and depressed and worried that she was feeling sad and depressed, and called me for an extra session.
Awesome. And we'll post again, we posted her part of her daily mood log in last session, podcast number 1 on coronavirus, and we'll post it here. And more of it as the session evolves, so you can see how she found distortions in her negative thoughts and how she combated them and so forth. Tell us a little bit more about Alice, keeping her identity primarily confidential. We're very grateful to Alice to share this real example, and tell us about some of her negative thoughts and then how you went about being helpful to her.
Okay. Well, Alice is a teacher and she's a writer, and she's married, she's heterosexual, and she's been in a long-term marriage. And is that good enough to tell her about? Yeah, is that good
plenty.
enough? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So here are she came up with 5 negative thoughts. The first one was, this could be the new normal. And she believed that 80%. And what she meant the new normal was just sitting around at home, isolated with her and her husband, and not having the motivation to do anything. And first I want to say that we talk about specificity in TEAM, and we ask the patient or the client to find a specific moment in time when they were upset by these negative thoughts and feelings. And her upsetting event was that morning when she was having trouble staying focused and settling in on a project that she was working on. So her first negative thought, like I said, was, this could be the new normal. The second thought was, my life is going to waste, and she believed that 80%. Her third negative thought was, I should be handling this better, and she believed that 90%. Her fourth thought was, I could catch the virus and die, and she believed that 40%, and she also thought, no one's in charge, and she believed that 80%.
Now, tell us why we asked the patient to rate the intensity of the negative feelings in such a precise way, and to rate how much they believe the negative thoughts.
To rate the feelings? Well, we asked them to rate the feelings so that we can monitor if they, what their goal would be. If they
But can't a good therapist kind of tell how a patient is feeling just through their sensitivity and empathy skills?
Well, we like to think that we can, but so often since I've been using these tests, it's just hit home with me that you can't tell how a person is feeling just by looking at them. Like if you saw this woman, she came in, she was very well dressed and well groomed, and she was smiling, and if you looked at her, you would think, hey, nothing's the matter with her. She seemed perfectly, happy. But to say that she was sad and depressed at 95% and anxious at 95%, I would never have known that.
Yeah, and those levels are as intense as patients who are hospitalized for depression getting electroconvulsive therapy.
Yes.
And it is factually incorrect that patients can tell that therapists can tell how their patients are feeling. Therapists believe this, but if you do simple tests, asking the patient independently, how are you feeling, and then asking the therapist, how do you think this patient is feeling, those numbers won't be correlated. And it's reasonably simple to just use the daily mood log, and then you can see exactly what you're dealing with. Jeremy, maybe you could answer.
May I chime in?
Yeah.
Chime in really quick. I think the point you just made also has tremendous implications for people who are thinking about their friends and loved ones right now. There's probably a lot of people who are you're hanging out and talking to them maybe on the phone or through a video call, and they're seeming totally great and fine, much like Alice. But in actuality, they may be really struggling. And so, really asking people how they're doing, and not just assuming based on your impression of them is kind of vitally important, not just for therapists, but for connecting with your friends and family during this time as well.
And often incredibly appreciated by the person you're talking to.
That's
right.
Really good point, Jeremy.
Now, I had another question here. So now we know that circling the feelings and rating them is not some bean counter procedure for obsessive therapists who like numbers. It's a massively important basic empathy tool that you simply cannot do good empathy without this. It's really not possible. Now we're also having her rate how much she believes these negative thoughts. Like she believes 90% I should be handling this better, and my life is going to waste. She believes that 80%. Why do we ask patients to rate these beliefs?
Well, as we go through the TEAM process, we want to get to a place where the percentage of their belief in these negative thoughts gets as close to zero as we possibly can.
Right, but there's a theory behind this, and theory that happens to be true, and that's that all of our feelings result from our thoughts. The coronavirus epidemic cannot upset a human being. Only our thoughts can upset us, and that idea goes all the way back 2,000 years to the teachings of Epictetus. People are disturbed not by things, but by the views we take of them. And in order to be feeling upset, you have to have a negative thought in your mind, and you also have to believe it. If you have a negative thought and you don't believe it, then it won't upset you. Like right now, I have the thought, my house is about ready to explode. But it doesn't upset me because I don't believe it. But if you believe a negative thought, like my life is going to waste 80%, that creates tremendous pain for you. And those of you who are listening who have been upset, you know what I mean, that your mind gets flooded with negative thoughts when you're depressed and anxious or angry or whatever, or ashamed or inadequate, and you totally believe those thoughts to be valid. And that's the cause of all negative emotions. It's the messages in your mind, the things you're telling yourself that you believe to be true. And what you said, Rhonda, is so important that if we can show the person that those thoughts aren't true, bring their thoughts and those thoughts, their belief in those thoughts down near zero, their feelings will improve. In fact, the very moment you stop believing a negative thought, you will, in that very instant, your emotions will change, and often quite dramatically.
And that's exactly what happened with Alice. And it's also surprising, and this isn't the first time she'd filled out a daily mood log, but the way that she left feeling so much better was even a surprise to her.
Well, let's keep it a surprise to us and our listeners too until we go through the section a little bit.
I think Rhonda may want to be modest and not kind of want to overhype her own therapy skills, but I think we should talk about what happened to this person. That way the listeners know about the power of the techniques that you're about to describe in the rest of the podcast.
Exactly. How do we go?
Do you want to tell the folks what happened?
Well, we'll get Rhonda to tell us. But Rhonda, did you just jump in and tell her that her negative thoughts were distorted and false? Or
and then she felt better.
How do we go about changing these negative thoughts and feelings in TEAM?
Well, I just jumped in and said, hey, Alice, all those negative feelings you have are kind of stupid, or like, come on, why don't you just relax about it? Take 10 deep breaths and you'll feel better.
And then she suddenly felt euphoric, and that's our message for today, folks. Just say this to anyone you know who's depressed and cheer them up a bit, and they'll be feeling better.
No, sorry, I don't mean to make light out of it. Well, I asked her, Alice, if I had a magic button on the table that you're sitting next to, and if you push this magic button, all of your negative thoughts and all these really challenging feelings would go away, would you push the button? And she said, I absolutely would push the button because these are causing me a lot of pain. And I said, Alice, honestly, I would be really reluctant for you to push that button because I could see that these thoughts and feelings show things about you that are really beautiful, that speak to your core values. Maybe they're protective. And let's as you know, as Alex said last week, what do these thoughts say about you that speak to what's right about you, not to speak to what's wrong about you?
So then,
and then we came up with a positive. Then we did the positive reframing, and we looked at all those things. What do they say about her? That's awesome.
Yeah, let's what positive reframing is taking a negative thought or feeling, and instead of thinking of it as bad, you think, what is really good about this? What is this thought or this feeling? Like, what does my depression show about me and my core values that's positive and awesome? What are some benefits of feeling depressed or feeling anxious or feeling inadequate as she was feeling, or despairing? How does that work, Rhonda?
Well, sometimes it's a little challenging to come up with those positive aspects because it's such a new way of looking at symptoms of these challenging feelings and thoughts. So, it takes a while, but I said, Alice, think about what does your sadness and depression say about you that's really awesome. And sometimes she needed me to kind of prime the pump, but once she got going, she could really think about a lot. And
tell us what you guys came up with. And this is a list. And you can do this for yourself. If you're depressed, you can write down your negative feelings on an emotions table like the one you'll see on her daily mood log. Circle your feelings and rate how strong they are. Then write down your negative thoughts. And then before you try to change anything, ask yourself these two questions and see what answers you can come up with. Remember, the first question is, what is this feeling or what is this thought? Do it one feeling or thought at a time. Don't do it as a gestalt thing overall. Just say, I'm feeling inadequate, as she was feeling, or incompetent or something like that. 65%. What does that show about Alice and her core values that's positive and awesome? And what are some benefits to Alice and having that thought? Any ideas about could we start with that one, or?
Sure.
What?
Well,
she says she feels incompetent. She's up there. She's struggling. She's procrastinating. She's feeling, and then she says she's incompetent. What does that show about Alice and her core values that's positive and awesome, Rhonda?
Well, it actually showed Alice in a funny way that she loved structure. And at the same time of loving structure, she also loved resisting structure. And she was having a hard time because there was no structure in her life to resist. So like her foil was gone. But she didn't actually but that was a big realization for her, how much she loved structure.
The feeling of incompetence showed how much she loved structure?
Yes.
Jeremy will expand on that to make it a little clearer to some of us.
I was just reading through this list. One thing that she also wrote was, she said, I'm judging correctly what I'm going through, and I think when you're judging yourself as incompetent, one thing that you're displaying is a lot of humility and a lot of realism.
Right.
So I thought that was kind of a neat thing, and that's a humility is like a kind of a spiritual quality, and I think realism is kind of like on par with wisdom, even if you're being realistic about your own shortcomings.
I love that. That really brings it to life for me. So you're saying that whenever we're feeling inferior or inadequate or incompetent, we might be looking at things realistically, because I screw up all the time. I'm in the fortunate position of getting a lot of praise from people. I get occasional criticism, but mainly praise, and that can kind of go to your head because I make mistakes all the time, and sometimes mistakes that can hurt other people. I had a huge therapeutic failure just about a week ago, and my patient got horribly angry with me, and I thought I'd been doing great. I mean, she became livid, and I didn't find out about it until after the session, and it was really shocking and disturbing. I barely slept for two nights, and then we talked it over and had the most incredible meeting of the minds and souls. But I think we all fail a lot in all kinds of ways. We fail our loved ones, we fail in our careers, we fall short of our goals. And when you're saying I'm inferior, I'm worthless, I'm inadequate, I'm incompetent, you're saying I'm willing to look at that side of myself. And I think that's a beautiful thing, and it can show from this woman a beautiful sense of humility. Does she come across that way to you, Rhonda?
She does, and it also showed that she's willing to continue learning. She's not stuck in her belief system so much that she's rigid. It showed that she was flexible and willing to learn.
I love that. That is so cool. Tell us about more things on your positive reframing list here, Rhonda.
Well, it showed the thought this might be the new normal showed her that, what Jeremy said, she's really aware of how she's feeling and that she's reading her inner life correctly. And she's also reading the external road correctly. Things are really changing. And that's the value of being flexible. And actually, I didn't have her positive reframe categorized by the feelings that they were elicited from. I just made a long list of them.
Well, just go through the things on your list.
Okay. She said that, she trusts and is willing to listen to healthcare professionals, and she respects that other people know better than she does, especially the healthcare professionals and the public health professionals. And so she respects other people. She trusts other people. She values face-to-face relationships. That's what she thinks. That's what her anxiety showed, that she values face-to-face relationships. And right now she wasn't having the same kind of casual encounters in her day-to-day life, like going to Starbucks or going to the grocery store that she was used to having. So it also showed that she did.
Yeah, then just slow you down a little bit so we can make this make sense to our listeners. So it's great. Not just a list of cheerleading. Okay. Because that's the huge error that people make, and they don't grasp positive reframing. And you see she's sad and depressed, 95%. And one of the reasons is because she's cut off from other people, and it shows how much she values face-to-face relationships.
Right. Not just with friends, but even casual relationships, like going to Starbucks. She's the kind of person that, when she will have a conversation of some depth with everyone she meets.
Right.
Oh, yeah, she values connecting with people. And just to remind people, what this positive reframing list is, it's a list of all the things that your negative thoughts and feelings show about you. That's awesome. That will go away if you get rid of your negative thoughts and feelings. So if she was happy as a clam right now in this period where she's not getting to see people face to face, it'd be like she didn't care about all those people that she gets to connect with on a daily basis, and like she didn't really value that, when obviously that's tremendously important to her.
Right.
Yeah, and when she says my life is going to waste, it shows that she values achievement.
Yes.
She doesn't like procrastination, that she has high standards, and her high standards have motivated her to accomplish a lot in her life. And so if she wasn't saying my life is going to waste, she would just be saying, yeah, I can kind of procrastinate and do nothing, and that's fine with me because I don't value the writing that I do, or the creation, the creativity that I have. She's also saying I could catch the virus and die, and she's saying that means that she's accepting death, the positive, and asking herself, what will I do with the time that I have? In other words, I could catch the virus and die. Well, she's probably not going to, but the awareness that it's a possibility can make her more committed to life. I was recently talking with a dear colleague who is facing death from terminal illness, and she has the fear of death, and I was trying to help her get over the fear of death, and I was noticing she was resisting that, and I couldn't understand why is she resisting my efforts to help her get over the fear of death. And then it suddenly came out that she says, because of my fear of death, I value every minute I have. I value every sunset, every moment with my dog, every moment with a cat I meet when I'm out walking. walking through the forest, meditating. And that was such an awesome thing, that her fear of death is such a beautiful thing that's intensifying her experience of life. That's a really good example of positive reframing, that our fears, our anger, our despair, our shame, these can be revealing really beautiful things about us. What were some of the more things that you came up with there, Rhonda, with her in the positive reframing?
Well, she also, we were talking about her motivation of some of these challenging feelings have been really motivating, and she has accomplished things, and she sees in her life that she's been able to juggle a lot of things at once. So she's a very competent person.
I'm just looking at your list here. What are some more things on your list? It's such a beautiful list that you have, and
I think I've read them all.
Oh, I see. I see. Right. And so, did she buy this? That her negative thoughts and feelings are showing beautiful and positive things about her. What's beautiful about her anxiety? I don't think you mentioned that one.
I think that was motivating for her to accomplish, and she, I don't want to say.
What are some other values of anxiety in this coronavirus era? If she presses the magic button, her anxiety will go to zero, and she'll feel euphoric.
Well,
is anxiety any value to us?
Well, it keeps us vigilant to stay healthy and to follow the guidelines of the CDC and
Absolutely. So that's incredibly important.
She also said that she could see that she's other times in her life when she has been in a crisis, she's looked to see that a crisis can be a chance of opportunity. So she's been able in the past to turn a crisis situation into an opportunity. Like, for example, at one point she was unemployed, and when she was unemployed, she was able to create a different type of business that eventually led to a lot of success for her.
Is that somehow embedded in one of her negative thoughts or feelings?
Well, I think that was part of her anxiety. I'm sitting around, I'm doing nothing, I'll never be able to do anything, I'll never be motivated again. And then
she's also saying this could be the new normal, which on the one hand, that could be a really scary thought, but given what you just said, Rhonda, maybe that's also a thought that gets her to look for new opportunities. Like, if life is going to be like this for a long time, if things are going to suddenly change, maybe I need to be creative and approach this differently.
Exactly.
Oh, that makes sense. And that's kind of what we're doing right now.
Exactly.
Yeah, because we can't meet together because we had to protect the old fart
from
getting coronavirus. So we're meeting online, and actually we can connect with many more people this way.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Alex is going to join our podcast on Monday, another cool coronavirus. So once you made this list, then what did you do?
Well, I reminded her exactly what Jeremy just said so beautifully, that if we got rid of all of her negative thoughts and the negative and challenging feelings, these beautiful and wonderful things about her and these things that reflect her core values would also go away. So
well, what should I do then? Because I'm upset and yet I don't want my core values to disappear. What's the solution? I'm hurting.
Well, I asked her to pretend instead of a magic button that I had a magic dial. So
awesome.
so instead of getting rid of them all together, could we dial these challenging feelings down? So just keep as much as you need to maintain the beautiful parts of them, but eliminate the pain and perhaps the suffering that they're causing her. And then we went back through all the feelings to determine how much of each of them she actually needed.
And that's in the goal column on the daily mood log, and you can click and take a look at that. But tell us what you dialed them down to, Rhonda.
Well, she actually wanted to keep her depression at a level of 20%. Before it was 95%, and she felt like she needed enough depression to keep all of these great aspects of herself.
In addition, if she had zero depression, it would show that she didn't really care about people and didn't really care about productivity and things like that.
Right.
So there can be a beauty. One of the poets, maybe John Milton, wrote the sweetest songs are those that tell of saddest thought. And there's a lot of sadness, and there can be a lot of beauty in our sadness. It shows our love for one another.
I love when you recite poetry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had to do it in high school. We had to memorize all these poems in high school. I still remember most of them, and they're really, really beautiful.
Yeah, that's neat. Well, she did want her anxiety to go down to 0. And she wanted her feelings of incompetence. She started at 65, and she wanted them to go down to 5. She wanted her feelings of despair, which were at 80. She wanted that to stay pretty high at 25. Her feelings of frustration, she started at 100, and she wanted to dial them down to 5.
Oh, awesome.
She wanted her feeling of irritation, which she started at 15. She wanted that down to 0. And she was feeling physically jittery at 80 to 85%. She wanted that down to 0.
Okay, and then that's the end of the TEAM, Testing, Empathy, Assessment of Resistance and Methods. That's TEAM. So now you've completed the assessment of resistance, and essentially what we've done is show her all the good reasons not to change. All the things that are negative thoughts and feelings show about her that's positive and awesome, the things that are right with her. And then paradoxically, once she sees that, once she's listened and hears what her negative thoughts and feelings are trying to tell her, then she doesn't need them to be up to such intense volume.
Right,
and she dials them down.
Because she could be proud of them.
Yeah, she can be proud of them. We want our patients to be proud of your symptoms, that your symptoms are not a reflection of what's wrong with you, like a personality disorder or a mental disorder, as claimed by the American Psychiatric Association and DSM-5, but not some chemical imbalance in your brain, but actually what's right with you, what is most beautiful about you. What did you do then?
Well, honestly, it's hard to fit a lot of methods into a 60-minute session. So we only had time to do 2 methods, but they were super powerful. So I asked her to pick the negative thought that was the most challenging to her, and she picked, this could be the new normal. And we went through and identified the cognitive distortions that she saw in that thought.
Could we just go through that quickly with our listeners? You'll be able to see the 10 distortions on one of the links to her daily mood log, because they're at the bottom of the daily mood log. You might want to turn off your computer, or not turn off your computer, but just stop the podcast temporarily. Now, if you're driving, don't do this, but if you're someplace where you can sit down and look at that list of 10 distortions and see how many distortions you could pick out in that thought. This could be the new normal. And then once you're done, you might find 1 or 2 or 0 or maybe 6 or 8 distortions. Then turn the program back on, and we'll tell you what we found. Okay, welcome back. I hope at least 2 or 3 of you did that exercise, because it's really
it's kind of fun.
A useful one.
Yeah, it really
Tell
is.
us about what you have here. It says you said mind reading and fortune telling. What did you mean by that?
Well, what she meant by it, because I asked her when she identified the distortion to tell me why she chose those distortions and what they meant to her. And what she meant was that fortune telling, she was looking into the future and imagining what it could have been, what it could be. And there's no way to know what's going to happen in the future. So that's why it's fortune telling.
And we know for certain this isn't going to be the new normal permanently, because a vaccine will be found for the virus, and we're in a bump in the road, but it's not going to be bumps endlessly. So she's making a negative prediction. That's a good one.
Even in the worst case scenario where they don't find any vaccine or antivirals, eventually people will get it and there'll be what's called herd immunity, which protects most of the population. So at some point, once the virus infects enough people, it'll go away.
Yeah. Okay, what are some more distortions you found here?
Well, she identified labeling. She was labeling her life, and then and she was labeling it negatively. So
what's the negative label?
The new normal.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It was magnification, because she was taking one incident and she was magnifying it, and that was also overgeneralization, where she was looking at one thing and generalizing it to her entire life.
So she's saying, because I woke up this morning feeling upset and procrastinating and feeling crappy, this is going to be my new normal.
Right.
And that's an overgeneralizing from how I'm feeling right now to the entire future and to myself.
Correct.
And that's the key to all depression. It's impossible to feel depressed without overgeneralization, and overgeneralization is always a distortion. And this finding went all the way back to Buddha, who said that depression never results from anything that happens on the surface of the earth. It only exists in the clouds of abstraction. And now we can understand precisely what that statement meant that he made so many years ago. How many of you are familiar with that statement from Buddhism? Raise your hands. I see quite a few hands going up. Buddha never said any of that BS, but he should have.
Oh. Okay.
What else? What other distortions?
She also thought it was all or nothing thinking.
Perfect. Now, why is it all or nothing?
Because she's seeing the new normal. It's either 100% of her life is part of the new normal or none of it.
Yeah, right. And things are totally changed or they're not changed at all, whereas things are changing all the time and things are the same all the time.
Right. It's always a mix. She also thought it was a mental filter and discounting the positives.
And that's beautiful. Why? Can you explain that one?
Well, with mental filter, she was only focusing on the few small things that were not working well. Like in that moment, she was having trouble focusing. But a few moments before, she focused really well when she made her and her husband a beautiful dish, breakfast. And she discounted the positives because she thought, well, who cares that I did that? That doesn't matter.
Yeah, beautiful. Any other distortions you can see, Jeremy?
Oh gosh, I'm not.
How about emotional reasoning?
Pretty good list.
How about emotional reasoning? I feel like things are all screwed up, therefore they are. Reasoning, because I feel lousy right now, that then, reality must be screwed permanently.
Right.
Could it be a hidden should statement?
Yes.
What would be the hidden should, Rhonda?
Well, things should remain the same. Or things shouldn't change.
Yeah, that's true. We shouldn't have these disasters. But I think there's another should.
What do you think?
Can I guess what? Can I make my guess?
Yeah.
Well, she's saying this is the new normal, and it's so terrible because she's kind of been depleted by this crisis. She's sitting at home, not being very productive, and she's saying, I should be really productive right now. Like I should be able to make awesome use of this time.
Yeah.
Like millions or even billions of people are, at home, maybe watching TV and just taking a little bit of time off from having this huge disruption in their lives.
Yeah, and she's probably also saying, I shouldn't be procrastinating. I shouldn't be having trouble staying focused. And I shouldn't be upset. I shouldn't be feeling this way. Those are huge, huge shoulds.
Yeah, huge number of them.
Now, once we know the distortions, what did you do? What did you do? Did she enjoy identifying those distortions?
She did. They were they created a lot of insight for her.
Great. And then how is she going to talk back to this thought?
Well, the only method we had time for, sometimes, most of the time when we do work, we like to do a few more methods, but the only method we had left to do was externalization of voices, where she talked back to these negative thoughts either by accepting some truth in them, or by, trying to defeat them, or by counterattacking them.
Yeah. Now, since few of our listeners will have any idea what externalization of voices is, let me explain it really quickly so they're with us.
Okay, look.
And that means that Rhonda is going to play the voice of the negative Alice and explain this to Alice and say, I'm going to attack you with your negative thoughts, and then I want you to see if you can fight back, and you'll be the self-loving Alice, and we can kind of do that. I'll be the negative Alice, and you, Rhonda, can be the positive Alice, and you can tell us what she said, which you've got written down here beautifully on the daily mood log. And so I'm the negative Alice, I'm your negative self, my name is Alice, and I'm telling you this could be the new normal.
Well, sadness enhances life, and there's beauty in melancholy. And
So
I'm also,
who-
and I'm, I, so when I did that with her, it didn't really defeat the negative thought. So, I gave it a turn, and then she did another turn. And at her second iteration, she said, I can build on my foundation. I've been a self-starter all my life, and I could get a lot done. I think my motivation will follow my action.
Great. And how much did she believe that between 0 and 100?
She believed that 100%.
And then did that reduce her belief in the negative thought?
Yes, it did.
And then did her thoughts change at that moment, or did you blow away the rest of her negative thoughts? Like, how did she talk back to my life is going to waste?
Actually, that's a really good point, because once we did a few iterations of the first one, the other thoughts just boomed right away. She just eliminated them pretty quickly. So when my life is going to waste, she came back with, hey, remember who I am. My life is going to waste. And that's okay, because what I do with my life is I'm a writer.
I don't get it.
I don't know, but that really helped her. She just to
Okay.
say, remember who I am. I mean, my life is going to waste, but it's okay, because it's all about what I do with my life. And I have to remember that I'm a writer.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't really matter if we don't understand it. That really made a big difference to her.
It helped her. And then
Yeah.
on, I should be handling this better. She said, I have a lot of experience as a self-starter.
I have
and now I have 8 weeks of free time to write. Give myself a break. There's what is the rest of this? There's something involved.
There's shock involved.
There's shock.
And I need some little time to regroup, and I'm giving myself time to regroup, and then I'm going to look at this opportunity. I'm going to see the opportunity that there is in the crisis.
Right. So the point being, something switched, and instead of deciding to beat up on herself the way she'd been doing with all these dramatic, catastrophic predictions and self-critical thoughts, she's accepting herself and treating herself in a loving way. And then what were her negative feelings at the end of the session, Rhonda? She had wanted her depression to go from 95 to 20. What did it go to?
It went to 10. So
How about her anxiety?
her anxiety went to 0.
Went to 0. That's awesome. And then her feelings of incompetence were at 65. What did that go to?
They went down to a 10.
And her feelings of despair started at 80. She only wanted them to go to 25. What did they go to?
They actually went to a 0.
And then her
So
frustration.
she should ask for money back on her money back guarantee.
I know, she wants a little
Get
bit
rid of
more.
all of her despairing feelings instead of just reducing it.
Right, exactly.
Right. And then her frustration started out at 100. What did that go to?
It went down to 20.
Her anger started at 15. What did that go down to?
That went down to 5.
And her
It's
anger
actually,
started, or her jitteriness started at 85. What did that go to?
and that's so interesting, because jitteriness, it was actually a physical feeling she had in her body, and that started at 85, and that went down to 5.
Yeah. So awesome. So what do you think the healing dimensions were? Were these changes real? And what caused them? Can you really help somebody who's so intensely disturbed in a single therapy session? Because a lot of our listeners have gone to therapists who don't measure anything. Many of them have had the experience of being in therapy for months, years, maybe decades or more, without experiencing any real change. Is this real, Rhonda, or are you just BSing us?
No, this was 100% real, because I emailed her this morning before we put on this podcast to ask her how she was feeling.
Or was she the one who said, I'm never coming back, you're terrible?
And she was feeling as happy today as she felt actually on Thursday.
And
So-
how did this affect you, Rhonda?
Well, it made me feel really, really happy, because
I think that's one of the things I love about therapy is you can't hurt a patient without hurting yourself. When I realized I'd hurt that patient, I was in agony for 2 days until I finally was able to talk to her and turn it around and turn it into something tremendous for both of us. And you can't help a person come to great joy without experiencing that yourself. I think that's one of the beautiful things about being a therapist.
Exactly. And I think
Jeremy, you've been quiet because we've been jabbering a lot, so we're going to let you add the polishing touch, the finale to today's podcast. There's a lot of people out there anxious, angry, depressed, ashamed, inadequate, frightened. What's the take-home message, or what?
Well, I think the thing that's just so cool about this is, and this is the experience I had with team therapy too, that got me so excited about it, is that if you're suffering with some of these feelings, and people now maybe have just been suffering for a week or so, as they've had this crisis washed over their lives, but there's other people who've been feeling like this for months or years, and if you're willing to put in the work and learn some new tools and maybe get some awesome help for someone like Rhonda, there's a lot of hope for you. And in fact, there's a lot of hope for you to feel better, not just at some distant point in the future, but soon. I mean, this is someone who came into Rhonda's office feeling just really down and upset about what was going on, and walked out, happy and joyous. And that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and some self-help tools, if you need more than just this podcast, would be my first book, Feeling Good, the New Mood Therapy, which shows you how to use a lot of these tools.
And also, may I also add, I think the other book that's really important is When Panic Attacks.
Oh, yeah. And many people who read those books experience a dramatic improvement in their moods. My new book, Feeling Great, will be released in September. It should be available for pre-purchase soon on Amazon, and in the show notes you can see the cover of the book, and that will have all of these brand new techniques like positive reframing that can lead to such amazingly fast changes. Well, we love all of you. We appreciate you listening to our podcasts, and we hope you enjoyed our podcast today and found it helpful, interesting, exciting, controversial, irritating. We hope you got some energy from it one way or the other.
And our next, may I add that our next podcast on our coronavirus coping is going to be really cool. With Alex Clark is going to join us. Jeremy's going to still be on the podcast, and we're going to have another team therapist who struggled in her relationship with her mom. And so we're going to talk about the 5 secrets on how to work within a relationship when you're having stress or depression.
Because coronavirus is putting a lot of pressure on relationships as well as mood, and so we'll be looking at that dimension in our next podcast. And until then, be well, be safe, and hopefully with our help, be happy.
Great. Okay, till next time.
This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes for this episode under the podcast page. You will also find archives of previous episodes and many resources for therapists and non-therapists. We welcome your comments and questions. If you want to support the show, please share the podcast with people who might benefit from it. You could also go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. The theme music is Gypsy Jazz in Paris, 1935, composed and performed by Brett Van Donsel. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.